There is a moment many people know well, though few speak about it openly. The house is quiet. The body is tired. The day has already ended, and yet the mind refuses to rest. Thoughts begin moving one after another with a strange persistence. A memory surfaces without invitation. Then a worry about tomorrow. And then a conversation that happened years ago returns with an unsettling clarity. You attempt to silence the mind. But the more you attempt to quiet it, the more active it becomes. And so a subtle anxiety begins forming beneath the surface. Why does my mind refuse to stop thinking? Is this simply the nature of being human? Or does the mind continue thinking because something within us remains unresolved? Most discussions of this problem remain shallow. You will be told that the mind is simply overstimulated, or that modern life has made concentration impossible. But these explanations only circle the surface of the mystery. The mind does not continue thinking without reason. It continues because something within experience is asking to be understood. And if we wish to understand it, we must be willing to do something most people rarely attempt. We must follow thought downward into the deeper movements from which it arises. Because the mind does not become clear by escaping its depth. It becomes clear by exploring them. And so before we attempt to quiet the mind, we must descend into it. Let us descend so that we may rise. Before we attempt to answer that question, we must acknowledge something important. Many people believe their restless mind is a kind of personal failure. They imagine that if they were wiser, calmer, more disciplined, their thoughts would naturally become quiet. But the truth is far simpler. A restless mind is not a defect. It is signal. Something within the psyche is asking to be understood. And the mind continues thinking because it is trying to complete a process that has not yet reached resolution. You have heard it said that the mind is the master of man. But I say to you, the mind is often the messenger of forces that have not yet been listened to. Thoughts appear because something within experience still seeks recognition. When that recognition does not occur during the day, the mind continues working long after the world has grown quiet. The sages of the East once described the mind as a monkey leaping endlessly from branch to branch. Anyone who has observed their own thoughts carefully knows the image is not exaggeration. One thought leads to another. A memory leads to interpretation. Interpretation leads to emotion. Emotion then pulls the mind toward another memory. The movement continues. Yet the metaphor contains a deeper implication that is often overlooked. The monkey does not leap randomly. It leaps because something in the forest attracts its attention. The mind behaves the same way. Thoughts move because something within experience carries weight. The contemplatives of the desert once described the mind in another way. They spoke of it as a storm of impressions and memories. A storm is not a single event. It is a convergence of forces. Wind meets pressure. Pressure meets moisture. And together, they produce movement in the sky. The mind behaves similarly. Thoughts do not arise from nowhere. They emerge where memory, emotion, and identity meet. When these forces gather around a single experience, the mind returns to it repeatedly. Not because the mind enjoys suffering, but because the experience has not yet been fully understood. In the series on this channel called Movements of the Mind, we explored how human experience unfolds through three primary processes. Sensation receives the world. Thought interprets it. Emotion gives the experience gravity. These movements together form the structure through which consciousness navigates reality. But when emotion gives an experience strong gravity, something interesting happens. The mind begins orbiting it. Thought returns to the same event again and again, attempting to complete what the psyche perceives as unfinished. This is what many people experience as overthinking. Yet the word itself hides something important. The mind is not merely thinking too much. It is trying to resolve something that has not yet been reconciled. When an experience is emotionally charged, it leaves an imprint. The mind returns to the imprint repeatedly, replaying it, examining it, imagining alternative outcomes. Not because the mind enjoys the repetition, but because the psyche seeks harmony. Until that harmony is found, the movement continues. And this is why the mind is often the most active at night. During the day, we are distracted. Activity pulls attention outward. But when silence arrives, the unresolved elements of experience begin gently knocking at the door of awareness. There is another force involved in this process: identity. Each person carries an image of who they believe themselves to be. This image is constructed gradually through memories and interpretations. Thoughts constantly reinforce it. Stories about the past, stories about the future, stories about what kind of person we believe ourselves to be. But anyone who observes their own mind closely enough will notice something peculiar. At different moments, different impulses seem to take control. One moment you are confident, another moment doubtful, one moment generous, another moment guarded. It is almost as if several voices exist within the same mind. Most people sense this intuitively. And yet, we still attempt to force these movements into the illusion of a single, unchanging identity. The mind continues thinking partly because it is trying to maintain that narrative. Yet, beneath the story, something far more fluid is actually occurring. There is a remarkable passage attributed to Jesus in an early Christian text. His disciples asked him, "On what day will you be revealed to us? And on what day shall we see you?" And he answered, "When you unclothe yourselves and are not ashamed, and take your garments and lay them beneath your feet like little children and trample on them. Then you will see the Son of the Living One, and you will not be afraid." The words may sound strange at first, but their meaning becomes clearer when we consider identity. Garments are things we wear. They cover us. They present an appearance to the world. In the same way, the personality we present to others often functions as a garment of the mind. The instruction is not to destroy the garment, but to see it clearly for what it is. When the mind briefly loosens its grip on the story of identity, something extraordinary happens. A moment appears in which awareness is no longer confined entirely within that narrative. That moment has been described by many traditions in different ways. But in the language of this channel, it is the beginning of the narrow path. There is another pattern many people notice as life progresses. Older individuals often repeat the same stories again and again, the same memories, the same phrases, the same small collection of reflections. People sometimes dismiss this phenomena casually, but anyone who observes it carefully may notice something deeper. When identity becomes strongly attached to certain memories, the mind begins orbiting them in the same way it orbits emotionally charged events. The story becomes part of the self, so the mind returns to it repeatedly, reinforcing the narrative. In a subtle way, the same pattern appears in much younger minds as well. We all carry certain stories we repeat, certain conclusions we return to, certain interpretations that shape the way we see the world. The mind continues thinking because these patterns have not yet been fully reconciled. There is an ancient symbol associated with the unconscious mind: the moon. Unlike the sun, which illuminates the world directly, the moon reflects a subtler light. It governs tides and rhythms that operate quietly beneath the surface. In the same way, much of our psychological life unfolds beneath the threshold of immediate awareness. When unresolved experiences gather that deeper layer of the psyche, they begin influencing thought from below. The mind then produces interpretations in response to forces it does not fully see, which is why thinking can sometimes feel mysterious. But once the deeper rhythm is recognized, the movement of thought begins making sense. The mind becomes quiet not when it is suppressed, but when it has been understood. The purpose of thought is not merely to produce ideas. It is to bring hidden tensions within experience into the light of awareness. When those tensions are acknowledged, something remarkable happens. The movement begins to soften. These are the first steps to knowing thyself. There is an older meaning of the word prayer that many people have forgotten. It did not originally mean repeating words. It meant attentive contemplation, a turning of awareness toward the deeper movements of the soul. When a troubling thought returns again and again, it is often an invitation to this kind of contemplation. Not to escape the thought, but to examine it with clarity. To ask what within experience remains unresolved. When this kind of attention is given sincerely, reconciliation often appears naturally. And when reconciliation appears, the mind no longer needs to repeat the same movement. This principle lies quietly behind the alchemical phrase, solve et coagula, dissolve and then recombine. Experience is examined, old interpretations loosen, new harmony forms. The mind reorganizes itself around deeper understanding. Over time, the very movements that once produced confusion become the instruments of clarity. And the mind that once felt chaotic begins revealing a hidden order. Dear reader, if you have followed this far, you have already begun looking beneath the surface of your own mind. Many people sense that consciousness contains deeper possibilities, but few take the time to examine its mechanisms directly. The series on this channel, Movements of the Mind, and Solve et Coagula, exists precisely for that purpose. To explore the structure of consciousness, and to show that the evolution of awareness is not a mystical fantasy, but a process that can be understood and practiced. These essays you are reading now stand between those foundations and what comes next. Soon we will begin exploring the nature of the will, the faculty through which human beings consciously shape the movements of their own mind. But before that ascent can begin, the machinery itself must first be seen clearly. And that is what we have begun doing here. If these reflections resonate with you, there is far more waiting beyond this threshold. Walk the narrow path long enough, and the mind that once felt like a prison gradually reveals itself as an instrument.